So thank you very much for being at the presentation. I'm very happy to present our work with the paper that I've been working on with Tingting Zhang and Robert Bruno. And we're from University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. And the title of the study is Maintaining Union Effectiveness During the Crisis Moments. And this is an empirical paper, but it is still in the preliminary stage. So we are working on the theoretical development or data analysis. So it would be great if we could get any of the feedback on this paper through this presentation. Thank you very much again for being at the presentation. Yeah, I would like to start from the research motivation. So the union power is built on the membership solidarity. It has been recognized within the IR literature. And then in the IR literature, there has been extensive studies on what unions do, which mostly focuses on the instrumental functions of unions. What decides the solidarity of the membership usually rely on the instrumental functions of unions. However, when union members actually evaluate the union effectiveness, internal governance, and democratic structure, they are also very important. And in terms of democratic structures, communication, internal communication within the union became critical to maintain the union structure. This internal communication, again, is very crucial, but it is still understudied in the industrial relations literature. Some of the studies that shows the internal communications are important, and other studies focused on the ICT technology, but its usage, how its usage can boost communication efficiency among the members. And I'd like to move on to our research question and the conceptual framework that we are using to answer the research question. And our research question is that, is the union's internal communication effective even during the extreme circumstances? So we are focusing on the union's internal communication and whether it affects the union effectiveness or the effectiveness of the communication during the crisis moments. And we are delving on to the IR literature and communication literature. In the IR literature, it shows that decentralized union structures makes internal communication of unions very challenging. And to overcome this challenge, union locals have been a foundational information hub using means such as union meetings or informal interactions with representatives at the actual workplaces. Also, ICT mentioned previously, it facilitates a fast and low-cost communication structure, but it has its own pitfalls as well, as IR literature shows. Some of the social examples could be social media community or union member-only websites, and some of the mass media communications, such as union e-newsletters, mass emails, or mass text messages sent to the union members. We are also looking at the communication literature as well, which deals with the crisis communication, which shows that it could facilitate collective sense-making, the sense-making of union members in this case, and then which shows that fast communication and accurate information, providing the accurate information is very important during the collective sense-making process during the crisis. To answer this research question, we are focusing on a specific context, which is teachers' union in Illinois and COVID-19 vaccine mandates. So teachers' collective bargaining rights, they vary across states, but in the case of state of Illinois, Illinois teachers are protected. We are focusing specifically on Illinois Federation of Teachers, which is one of two large unions in the Illinois. The other one is IEA, Illinois Education Association. IFT, Illinois Federation of Teachers, it represents both pre-K to 12 and higher education. And the characteristics of IFT is that they're very militant and they engage in active bargaining. Compared to the other union, IEA, it has 4 to 5 years of bargaining cycle, but it is very active. It is more militant, like there are more mobilizing strikes, and unions have better understanding of what their unions are doing, and they're more powerful. But there are some large variation by geographical areas, such as Chicago public school teachers, they're more local and they're more active. But compared to Chicago, in rural areas, there are some less active. But in overall, it is still very militant and strong union. Um, and the context of vaccine mandate is that in the United States, federal vaccine mandate has been enacted in November 10th, 2021. But some of the states, including in Illinois, the vaccine requirement for healthcare workers or higher education workers or pre-K to 12 teachers and staffs, the vaccine requirements were enacted early on, September 3rd, 2021. There are some exemptions. There could be some exemptions, such as medical or religious, and vaccine or test options are available. But still, it is a very stringent enactment where the non-compliance could be seriously penalized, and which could ultimately lead to the discharge or terminations. We are focusing on this context, and we are focusing on 2022, where the situation was the most intensive. The vaccine mandate currently, there's another bill that is going through the legislative process where as you know, COVID vaccine mandate act that says that there should be no requirement of vaccine mandate, but it is introduced in February 2023, but it is still in the legislative process. So this enactment is the power or impact of this enactment is slightly got weaker in 2023, but we're focusing on 2022. We did a survey on 2022 where this issue was the most intensive. So here is the empirical context and some of the empirical models that we have used. So we are focusing on IFT members, 1,027 individuals in our sample. We include them in our sample. And we conducted online survey using Qualtrics. And based on the variables that we have measured, which will be introduced in a minute, we utilized OLS regression as a quantitative estimation model to drive some of the conclusions and test some of our arguments. And we used quantitative technique called inverse probability of treatment weights. It's basically a two-stage model, deals with the problem of random selection and the omitted variable bias, which could resolve some of our concerns on endogeneity and omitted variable bias. So here are the variables that we empirically measured, the concepts that we are interested in. Our dependent variable is the perceived union performance of the union members, whether union members perceive their unions are effective or not. And our independent variable is the alignment between union and member in terms of how they feel about vaccine mandate and whether they endorse vaccine mandates. So we use two items to measure the union's position and union members' attitude. And then dichotomize this variable. So 1 in this variable means that they are aligned, but 0 means that they are not aligned. And we also look at some of the union's internal communication efforts as a moderator. One item measuring the union representative communication, in-person communication, and the other item measures union's information provision, that the union's efforts to provide information to the members based on the mass media communication. And we empirically control some of the characteristics of the union members to rule out the omitted variable bias. Here is the brief descriptive statistics of our sample. There are correlations between these variables, and we looked at the mean and standard deviations to find out whether there is no outliers or any other statistical bias that could be involved. Here is the empirical results that we have based on our OLS regression estimation. And our Model 1 tests whether union's internal communication efforts and whether the alignment between union and members have an effect on union's members' perceived union performance. There is a positive significance coefficient of internal communication and alignment. which shows that the alignment between union members and union is very important on how union members perceive the unions are effective or not. Union's internal communication effort as well affected how union members perceived regarding union performance. Um, and model two is a moderation effect, where we looked into the moderation between alignment and internal communication, which shows that the positive effect of alignment on perceived performance gets stronger when unions make a great internal communication effort. And we looked into each item of the union internal communication effort separately, and it shows that in Model 3 and 4, the main effects of union internal communication effort is mainly driven by the information provision function of unions, but not much by unions' in-person communication efforts. Model 3 is that information provision has positive coefficients, and Model 4 shows the interaction term with information provision, mass media communication, has a significant effect, moderation effect with the alignment. These are some of the conclusions that we that we have from the empirical estimations. First one is that representing the members' preference with regard to the unions, with regard to the vaccine mandate is very critical. And it is the case particularly for the contentious issues like COVID-19 vaccine mandates. And also, the second conclusion that we have right now is providing information via mass communication is very beneficial during this crisis moment, which is reflected on how union members perceive the effectiveness of the unions. And third, interestingly, in-person communication is not associated with perceptions of union effectiveness, and the mass media communication was shown as very beneficial to the union effectiveness. And it is, we think, a little bit contradicting in a sense that in-person communication used to be thought as more trustworthy and more effective. But in this case of crisis moment and in the specific cases of COVID-19, in-person contact was not effective as mass media communication. And we are thinking of some possible explanations that since this is a very political and sensitive case, members may be too stubborn to change their opinion based on the in-person communication, or local leaders or representatives may not have enough training to help them facilitate these difficult conversations more effectively. But we're still working on how to interpret these results and how to make a conclusion out of our estimation results. We aim to contribute to the by showing the empirical evidence of the effects of different communication mechanisms simultaneously under a specific context, and then by looking into the union functions beyond instrumental measures by focusing on their internal communication. There are some of the limitations of this study. It is still in the preliminary stage of theory building and data analysis, and there are some limitations on data collections and analytical methods because of the challenges to run a study during a crunch time. But we could improve. We think we could improve the constructs, and even though we may not have a representation in our survey, and some of the results, and that's because we have correlational estimates. But we hope we could improve our study if we have an opportunity that allows union supports and that allows the improvement of the analytical methods. We might be able to do things better later. So this is the end of my presentation, and thank you very much for listening it. I was happy to present our work, so thank you very much.